What's up, everyone? Hope you're all having a great weekend so far. We're going to talk about AMC, but we're not going to hype anybody. We're not going to do anything like that. We're just going to go over the data and, what's going on here with this stock, given everything that's happened and the data we're about to view. Hopefully, this will be of value to some of you guys. So let's go ahead and look at AMC. Is it going to squeeze? Well, it sure is set up mechanically to do so, but the question is, will it come to fruition? Let's look at the data, some historical trends, and where we're at now, and we'll see what it tells us. So, number one, let's go over the failures to deliver. Now, when it comes to FTDs, there also can be failures to receive, just to let you know, but as we all know and have seen in the data, AMC fails to deliver on a regular basis. Now, what's the magnitude of these fails? We're going to go ahead and take a look at that. The implications of high levels of FTDs can sometimes, not always, but sometimes be a precursor to a short squeeze, as they might indicate that short sellers are struggling to cover their positions. Clearly, at this point, the short interest is still very high and relevant for AMC stock, but again, you're going to have to wait for the next report to come out due to the split mechanics, but that'll be a very critical report when that does come out. So again, high levels of FTDs can imply a few things, such as, number one, there's not enough shares going around. Number two, they're struggling to cover their positions, and, which is good for the squeeze candidate. Now, if we look at the data, now this data is surveying from early 2021 all the way up until today, and this is the failure to deliver chart over time. This metric shows the number of shares that failed to be delivered. The data appears to fluctuate, with some days experiencing a high number of FTDs. High levels of FTDs, again, could be indicative of market inefficiencies or manipulation and can sometimes precede a short squeeze. So, I want you to take a look at something here. Remember in 2021 when this thing ran all the way to the moon and whatnot? Well, look at the FTD levels there. Look at the FTD levels now and ask yourself, what doing? So, that's concerning, right? Way down here, it looks like 0.35 or so, and we're sitting here now right around those same levels, but just coming down off a big trend here. And what do we know here? That just before the July event happened, you saw a large spike in FTDs precede that run. So maybe that's what this is here. Who knows? I'm just the messenger. Now, when we look at the stock price over time, you don't really need me to give an explanation of that. It's done nothing but go down. But look at this zone here. This is interesting because now we're sitting at all-time lows with very relevant levels of short interest, very relevant levels of fails, very relevant levels of volume, and the media is declaring memes are dead and apes are not going to save AMC. It's all a charade. So don't buy the media. Just look at this data. It speaks for itself. If we look at the amount of FTDs times the dollar amount over time, this is where it's a little bit backwards from what I just showed you on the first graph. If you look at the magnitude of the fails back in early June, July of 2021, the magnitude of the fails was much higher than it is now. But the level of fails now is a lot more than previously, so those kind of balance each other out. But this is your amount of FTDs over time, and it represents the total monetary value of the fails to delivered calculated as the number of shares multiplied by the stock price at the time. This metric provides an idea of the financial magnitude of the fails to deliver. Now we're going to look at short volume. Let's look at the short volume. This one is going to be obvious. I'm sure you're all aware that it's heavily shorted. Implications of this: high levels of short volume can indicate that short interest will be increasing on the next report, more than likely. Short interest being at or above that 20% of the shares outstanding mark is the point to where it becomes relevant. Now, AMC's current short interest is unknown because, again, we had a stock split. So check that report when it comes out. It's going to be very critical because as of the last report, if you take into the account now where AMC's shares outstanding are, if it didn't change, which we know it's going to because of the split, it would be 3 times the current float. So very, very important to make sure we check that report when it does come out. It should be any day now. Now looking at the short volume over time, this shows how many shares have been shorted. Spikes in this chart could signify increased short interest, which might lead to a short squeeze if these positions need to be covered quickly. So obviously we had a large spike here way back in 2021, but look at the levels we're at now. Preceding that, basically almost the same as far as short volume. But yeah, we're starting to pick up on the short volume for sure when it comes to total short percent of the day's volume. Now, if we look at the short exempt volume over time, this gets interesting because check this out. All of a sudden, the short exempt volume is at levels, or we just saw levels that we had back when the stock ran in July. So, looking at all these charts, you can kind of see how it's like yin yang. We got one side over here, one side over here. One thing lines up here, one thing lines up here. So you got short exempt volume lining up on both sides, but the short volume over time has somewhat decreased, basically stayed consistent since that run, with some spikes in the middle. Next, we have total volume over time. This is including short and regular volume. Again, it's we saw a massive spike there, trailed off, and it's basically traded flat the entire time. Really light volume here during this period of time between the 4th month and 7th month of this year, between April and July. So very interesting where this could be headed. And lastly, looking at the percentage of volume shorted over time, this shows what percentage of the total traded volume was shorted. A high percentage may indicate strong short interest and could be a precursor to a short squeeze if there is sudden upward price movement. So again, this one's kind of it's basically been trending up over time, but it's relatively stayed just about the same. Here is the distribution of everything I just showed you. You have distribution of short volume, distribution of short exempt volume, distribution of total volume, and distribution of percent shorted. As you can see, it's pretty much stayed around that between 50 to 65% mark for the majority. And then here is a correlation matrix of key metrics and AMC failures to deliver. This is going to be things like, that should say AMC short volume, sorry about that. You have short volume, short exempt volume, total volume, percent shorted, and the close. And what this means is the short volume and total volume have a very high positive correlation of 0.97, which is expected as short sales contribute to the total trading volume. Short exempt volume and total volume, these also have a high positive correlation of 0.93, which makes sense as well, as short exempt volume, again, is part of the total volume. The percentage of volume shorted and short volume have a moderate positive correlation of 0.64, meaning that generally a higher short volume results in a higher percentage of the volume being shorted. That's just common sense. Then we have closing price and other metrics. Correlations between the closing price and other metrics are relatively low, suggesting that these metrics are not directly influencing the stock price on a day-to-day basis. And the other metrics would be the high, low, open. So, high correlations between short-related metrics, such as short volume, short exempt volume, and total volume, indicate that short trading is a significant component of AMC's total trading volume. The moderate correlation between percent shorted and short volume suggests that when there is an increase in short volume, it usually constitutes a significant part of the total volume. This is critical. Wait and watch for that short report. It's going to be critical, because if that fucking short interest is anywhere above 50 million, game on, baby. So in essence, what we can gather from the data we just looked at. Number one, there is a high magnitude of FTDs. The actual figures for FTDs and short volume are quite high, indicating a substantial amount of shares that are either being shorted or failing to be delivered, or both. This could represent a high level of speculation or market manipulation, which may make the stock more susceptible to a short squeeze if these shares have to be bought back suddenly. Number two, the T+35 rule. The FTD dataset includes a T35 date, which is usually the settlement deadline for the FTDs. If a significant number of FTDs are due for settlement around the same time, that could create buying pressure potentially triggering a short squeeze. Then lastly, monetary implications. The amount of FTDs, dollar amount, indicates that the financial magnitude of these FTDs can be quite significant, which might have broader market implications. So you see now that this, it could be so big that there is market implications. But, it could be, just some crime being done right in front of our eyes. The question is, you're never going to know ahead of time. You can only track the data as it comes out, watch the developments as they come out, watch things like the short interest. Is it rising? Is it falling? Is it trending up? Is it trending down? Look at the daily volume at AMC. Is the volume trending up? Is it trending down? When we were at all-time lows, was there more than average volume or less than average volume? What's everyone saying on social media? What's the sentiment like in the news? Things like that. So anyways, hope you found this helpful. That's AMC data. I think something's going to happen, but again, I could be wrong because, crime does exist. But when you add in the fails, the shorts, the short interest, the borrowed shares, when you put all this together, you look at the data historically compared to today, we're right back where we started, and the stock's now at record lows with the smaller float. So, y'all have a good one.